Porsche has just dropped the 2024 Porsche Panamera. So what we're going to do in this video is have a look at this design, because I'm not sure if I like this better than the current generation Panamera. I think this still looks good, but there are a couple of details here that I think I prefer in the current one. So we're going to compare the front, side, and rear, and also the interior of the current Panamera to the new 2024 model. And they also dropped the Sport Turismo, the wagon version of the Panamera, which I thought was such a cool design, but we've lost another wagon, unfortunately. But before we jump into Photoshop here, let's have a look at the spec and tech of the 2024 Porsche Panamera. It debuts with more tech and up to 670 horsepower. For now, entry-level Panamera features a 348 horsepower turbocharged V6, while the 670 horsepower turbo e-hybrid sports a twin-turbo V8, a more powerful electric motor, and a larger battery pack. The Sport Turismo wagon body style has been dropped for this third generation due to slow sales. That's just too bad, because it was one of the coolest wagons out there, specifically a performance wagon. It evolves from the second gen model's form, gaining cleaner lines and more muscular front fenders that raise above the hood like those on a 911. Full width light bar in the rear end, but in this case I think it's okay, because Porsche has had light bars since the 60s and 70s, so they have a good reason to have a light bar in the rear end, not just following a trend. If there's any brand that's never follows trends, is going to be Porsche with their design. So first ever fitment of central locking wheels on a four-door Porsche. And here you can see the brand new interior is sort of in Porsche tradition and evolution over the current one, but there are some big changes here. For example, highlights include a gear selector toggle now positioned on the dash. So I do believe maybe this is the gear selector. We're going to have a look at this in more detail in a minute. So this looks completely empty now, but we're going to talk about the design later on. I'm going to stick to the spec and tech for now. So you have an array of up to 3 digital displays. 3 displays now, which seems like a pretty low figure if you think about modern cars with like 52 displays on the interior. You have a 12.6-inch unit for the instrument cluster right here, and it looks like it's completely digital right now. And you also have dual 10.9-inch displays, one here right in the center, and then you have an optional one right here for the passenger. So a lot of screens in the front end. Here's the new rear end as well. So the standard rear and all-wheel drive models have a 2.9-liter V6 with 348 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque. They all come with an 8-speed dual automatic transmission. 0 to 60 is about 5 seconds for the base car and 4.7 seconds for the all-wheel drive Panamera 4. And then you have the top of the line, the all-wheel drive turbo e-hybrid, twin-turbo 4-liter V8. Nice job, Porsche, keeping the V8 in the Panamera. You have 670 combined horsepower and 685 pound-feet of torque, but you can expect it to be an even more powerful version with the Turbo S like we have in the Cayenne Turbo e-hybrid right now, with 729 horsepower. Just insane, the power numbers that we have these days. You can also drive this in full EV mode for up to 30 miles, and I do love this setup. When you have a smaller little electric motor, but you also have a big V8 for when you really want to have some fun, and that is the perfect setup for me. 0 to 60, 3 seconds, top speed close to 200 miles per hour. Pricing starts at just over $100,000, but it goes up to the top turbo model about $200,000, so $100,000 more for the turbo model compared to the base model. So with that said, let's jump into Photoshop here and let's have a look what's new with the 2024 Porsche Panamera. Up top, we do have the current generation in a beautiful white with the e-hybrid turbo version. You can see the biggest changes happens right here in the bumper. Let's make this red so you can actually see what it is I'm sketching on here. This section is probably where the main changes happen. You also have a brand new hood. We still have these lines in the hood in the current one, but there are a lot more chiseled in the new one. You can see just how far up the fenders here, where the light headlights sit, how far up they sit now, bulging more over the front fender. I do like it, this treatment of the front end. However, this lower section looks, with this intake now up top right here, it looks like it sits higher and it doesn't feel as exotic as the current generation, because when you don't have this intake right here, it feels like this just has a lower, more pointier nose, while this has more of a static looking nose, and that comes into play when you look at the graphics as well. For example, these wings that we have inside of the front end of the 2023 model year, they are now similar to what we had, the changes, the refresh of the Cayenne. They're a lot more static and horizontal in the 2024 model. It doesn't look bad at all. That's not what I'm saying, but it does look more static, and it also looks like it sits higher. We also have a new headlight where this little corner piece, this piece is now a clear corner, or a clear triangle down here with a more defined corner piece for that specific area of the headlights. And they also evolved these 4 light bulbs that we used to have in Porsches. Now we have 4 LED strips or bars like this, which I think looks pretty good. Overall, it's a great refresh from Porsche, even though I do feel like it feels a little bit more static, and I'm definitely not a fan of this color. It's like a brown bronze gold color. I think maybe it looks good. I don't know. I have to see it in real life and in the sunshine, but probably not a color that I personally would pick for my Panamera. Let's have a look at the new 2024 Panamera from a side view, and this is the only photo I could find of the new Panamera from a side view. I don't understand why car companies don't drop the most important view, which is the side view, in the press photos. This I actually had to take from a video, just screenshot it to kind of have a sort of a side view. It's kind of a weird perspective here, but you can see that there are very tiny changes compared to the 2023 model. The biggest changes happens in the greenhouse, and this is one detail that I actually very much prefer in the 2023 model, is this section. So here we have a classic nice line or curvature of the greenhouse, the glass piece, but in the new one they decided to go a little bit, just have a little bit fun with this area and create more of a hard endpoint for the glass area, as you can see right here, instead of having it be this beautiful Porsche curvature like we have in the 2023 model. We also have new tail lights from a side view. They don't look much different, but they do from a rear view, which we're going to look at in a minute. And then you have this intake, which is again another piece that I think looks better on the 2023 model. It just looks more subtle and more beautifully integrated than what we have in the 2024 model. Because here, with these triangles up top and down low, it reminds me of the Audi integration of that specific air vent. And to me, Porsche should be very soft and organic in its design, and this is starting to become a lot more static than I want to see in a Porsche. And looking at the front end here, I think you can kind of see what I'm talking about when it looks like the front end feels like it's sitting higher, because we have this wall in the front end. Well, in the previous one we do have a similar wall, but it sits a lot lower and has this more pointier nose. That could have something to do with this perspective that we're looking at this side view from. Love the wheel design. Wheels looks fantastic. We do have one sharp line at the bottom. Does not really have a connection in the rear end. It goes into this reflector light, as you can see. So last but not least, before the interior, the rear end has some major changes to it as well. So we have the old one up top with this pretty traditional looking Porsche graphics, where you have a light bar still, but you have this dip in the graphics, and then comes back up a little bit, have Porsche stamped inside of it, and it looks really cool. You have the body colored piece, diffuser at the bottom, this being the GTS model with the quad tailpipes down below. Now the new one has a lot more similarities to the Porsche 911 when it comes to the taillight. So we don't have this upswing in the middle anymore. Instead, we just have two clean lines like this, and I do think this looks really good, but at the same time we don't have this curvature of the taillight. So you see we have a slight downward curvature of the graphics of the rear end, and that brings down the rear fenders. Here it feels like they almost have an upswing, so they kind of inverted that line, and again it feels like it just sits higher overall now than it does with the previous 2023 model year. It's not a bad looking design, but I feel like it's less sporty than the 2023 model, both in the front end as we talked about, and also here in the rear. And I'm not so sure if I like this integration of the bumper. We do have a clean, nice bumper right here at the bottom, but then we have this line cutting way up in the graphics, and I don't feel like that is a necessary line. If we're gonna have this, I would much rather have it curve in this area and have it sit lower, and then maybe have a connection to this line, so we have the license plate, the framing go in a much smoother way than just having this line fade up into nothing in this area. This being the Turbo E Hybrid, I'm not sure if the GTS is going to get the body color diffuser. I hope so, because I think that would look cool, but we still have a nice diffuser at the middle, and we still have the quad tailpipes visible as we should on a Turbo E Hybrid. Now coming to the interior here, and this is, I do like both of these interiors, but I do think this old one has a analog tachometer, and that is the single reason why I prefer the old generation here as well. So it's becoming more and more, I feel like more and more new cars coming out, I feel like I lean towards the current generation compared to the new ones that come out, just because everything is becoming so digitalized. We talked so much about that, but we still have, as you can see, a nice housing for the gauge cluster right here. This is the one infotainment screen, then you have a second one right here. So you have two the same size, 11 point something inches for the passenger and the infotainment screen. Big gauge cluster. The steering wheel looks fantastic. I do like that we have a small circle in the middle and 3-spoke, very basic design for the steering wheel. You don't need anything else than that. Also, another big change on the interior is that they moved the gear selector to now sit, I do believe, here we have the gear selector right here. And another change that I'm not so sure about, I just want to rest my hand on the gear selector here. Right now it's just gloss piano black, this entire piece, and it feels very naked and empty in that specific area. But overall, I think Porsche did a great job by bringing the Panamera up and in line with the rest of the design that we have from Porsche, from the new refresh of the Cayenne, for example, and also the Porsche 911. But they are creating a bit more static designs, and I'm not sure if I want to see Porsche go in that direction or bring back some of that more organic, fluid vibe that we're used to seeing from Porsche.